First of all, yes, I do have a cold. So I've gotten a few comments, and I've heard a bunch of people claiming that Messianic Jews aren't Jews at all. They're Christians pretending to be Jews. Now let's dissect that claim. First of all, what does it mean to be Jewish? Technically, it means that your ancestry goes all the way back to the tribe of Judah, but now we just kind of use it to refer to Israelites. Like modern day Israelites. Just hear me out, please. So it's a race thing. It's possible to be a Jewish Muslim, a Jewish Buddhist, or a Jewish atheist. Would anyone claim that Jerry Seinfeld isn't Jewish? Now, the thing is that Jewishness and Judaism are often associated. Sort of like being Arab and Muslim, or Indian and Hindu, or from Nepal and being Buddhist. But no one's claiming that if an Arab doesn't practice Islam, then he's not Arab. Or if an Indian doesn't observe Hinduism, then he's not Indian. No one's saying that. I don't think so. I haven't heard that. Anyways. Jews.
Hey, grace and peace, y'all. I'm digging. I can't believe. I went back when I was down in the city not too long ago. I went and grabbed a bunch. I try to grab some of the physical books here and there. And I can't believe the old stuff that I'm digging in. I'm finding old Greyhound tickets from back in the days. I would use those like spaces in between the book. That was all before this Kindle and all this other stuff started jumping. But I want to talk a little bit this morning before I get out of here. I'm going to play a couple of videos, but I want to talk a little bit this morning about the deceptions, misinformations, and just understanding the times that we're living in. I made a video not too long ago, and I was talking about some dangerous times because people are just coming through in the midst of videos. We got all type of people that come through, and some are coming just to gather information to see where people are. Because people like the Buffalo shooter, a lot of these school shooters, they feel that that what's happening, that people are being radicalized on the internet, social media, and groups like that. So the Department of Homeland Security, matter of fact, I need to pull that video up right now. I mean, not that video. I need to pull that up right now. The Department of Homeland Security, they released something. Let me see, where is this thing? Let me pull this up right here real quick. This comes from the Department of Homeland Security, and it's a bulletin on terrorism. Now, this terrorism isn't like 9/11 terrorism, what some people would think, far as outsiders, and some might have snuck in this country and they're looking at passports and the TSA at the airports, they're looking for certain things. This isn't that. This is something different. There's some homegrown terrorism, homegrown hate groups. There's some homegrown stuff that's going on. And a lot of these people and these new shooters and this new threat is primarily coming from within the borders of the United States, homegrown terrorists, homegrown people that they're worried about. And I'm going to just give y'all a little, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to explain how this works with a lot of the discussions that we have. So many things will start being deemed as hate speech. And I'm not gonna lie, some of it already is hate speech. We might as well call it for what it is. And racial discrimination, all type of stuff. Some people would say these things been around, but I'm telling y'all right now, their times have changed. And people and videos and TikTok, social media across all these platforms are being monitored. And they're watching because they believe people become radicalized in stages. They first believe they're chosen. Other people stealing who they are. A lot of people, these blacks coming into this country, these African, these Mexicans coming over here in the border, and they taking our jobs. There were more jobs. Those people fake, we the real ones. They stole our identity. What's going to become of us? They worried about the tanning of America. Too many of these people, blacks and whites, getting married. That's a sign that our race is being destroyed slowly. And folk want to do all type of crazy stuff, and they preach crazy stuff. And they'll get in these groups, and they would, how can I say it? These folk will get in these groups, and they'll start talking to other people, bleeding and understanding their position. And let me educate you, brother. You didn't see this other thing that's happening, and it's stirring stuff in them. And because we're a gun-loving country, we got hammers everywhere, gun show, gun shops in certain states are more loose, liberal than other states. a lot of these shooters, they're not buying, listen, they're not buying they're not making ghost guns. They're walking in the store and buying these AR. They buying these guns. And some of them there, and it's so crazy because it's not like they had guns a long time. Like these last few shooters, they bought guns within the month. The guy, I think it was 2 days before. And he went out there and started doing what he was doing. So they're worried and they're on the lookout, they claim. Like I said, this is from the Department of Homeland Security. Summary of terrorism threat to the United States of America. The United States remain in its heightened, wait a minute, what's this right here? In its heightened threat environment. As noted in the previous bulletin, and several recent attacks have highlighted the dynamic and complex nature of the threat environment. The coming months, this is what they're saying right here. This is not us. This is Department of Homeland Security now. This is the good old government saying, the coming months, we expect a threat environment of more dynamic as several high-profile events could be exploited to justify acts of violence against a range, you see what they say? Against a range of possible targets. These targets could include public gatherings. Y'all see that right here? What's this word right here? Faith-based institutions. That's what we call religious institutions like synagogues and mosques and churches. And, people believe churches are a soft target. We've had a number of church incidents in the last decade, and they seem to be like birthing pains. They seem to be getting closer and closer, but not just that, schools. Y'all know, did y'all hear about that sheriff down there? The sheriff turned around and said he didn't know who was in charge of them. I'm going to leave that alone. Kids getting killed, but schools and racial and religious minorities. So not just faith-based organization, but religious minorities also. Government facilities, personnel, U.S. critical infrastructure, the media, perceived ideological opponents, threat actors have recently mobilized to violence due to their factors such as personal grievances. That's why, because people, they want to get online and they can want to find out what made this person snap. What's the cause of this? Because they want to monitor all these things, and they have a few things on the top of the list, and they have a few things that they feel they need to worry about. Now, is it justified what they need to worry about? That some people would say, oh, that's another form of them trying to oppress. Reactions to current events, adherence to violent extremist ideologies, including racially or ethnically motivated or anti-government, anti-authoritarian violence. Now, y'all know Phineas Priesthood, Ku Klux Klan, all of them folk. Most of them folk, they're against the government. They're against the government. Government want to come take these guns. But they're not just watching those people who have internet, them people in the mountains, these people that want to get away on their own land and start gathering hammers and growing their own corn and stuff. They're watching them because they feel that they're looking at the government and they're taking on certain ideologies that's not right and exact. And they come to a time where they come to a point in these talks that they have where they feel something has to take place. A lot of them are what we would call end day or doomsday cults, apocalyptic cults, end of the world. Y'all coming to turn this thing around. These wicked folk ain't gonna keep doing wicked. He coming to avenge. So anybody talking about God, another king is coming back with another government or anything along them lines, like the current government need to be turned over, you need to be watched. Now, somebody can say, well, they need to be watching them folk on the 6th, but they're trying to watch almost everybody. And they're going to be gathering a bunch of information and all of what's going on right here. And threats to promote, inspire violence. They want to promote and inspire violence, and people listen to these videos, come to these talks, and start feeling some type of way that they got to take action. They want to sow discord. You see what those words are? And undermine U.S. democratic institute. They want to flip the government. They want to change. They want a new rule. We continue to assess the primary threats of mass casualty violence in the United States stem from lone offenders. People just going in the store, buying hammers, reading this cookbook stuff. They want to do their thing. And small groups motivated by a range of ideological beliefs and or personal grievances. I just wanted to bring that up because folk need to they need to make sure that they're careful in what they're saying, even in the name of the Bible, because you could say what you want. These people do know that a lot of radicalization, a lot of the stuff has come by way of, let's say, religion. In the midst of all of this stuff, people have an agenda. People want to help their agenda. People would lie. People would make certain things up. And they would pass around misinformation because the average person now is realizing the power of propaganda. When you start demonizing the people in propaganda. I told y'all back in the days when somebody would come up in them projects, we trying to get them. Listen, we running after them, and some other guys down there, get him, he just did something to the little kids. And then everybody's sitting outside gonna chase him and grab him. And that's just throwing some information. That's not what he did. It's some other money beef. It's some other stuff that's going on. That's not what he did, but just get out there and throw that information out there. So now everybody's gathered around and wait a minute, and I'm calling the cops and I'm gonna do this. No, I got the car right here. We taking him to the precinct. Put him in the car. Gonna do him dirty. Gonna do it. It's not gonna be good for him once he get in that car. They're not gonna see him. It's bad. It's just bad. And we got a lot of people using information and propaganda and doing some things. People just are trying to wake some people up, and the whole wokeness take a bad turn. Just being woke, that's just dangerous talk right now. But people are trying to bring people into a certain reality, and sometimes they'll put out information, and the information could be, and it could be for different reasons, because people aren't really researchers. They don't know how to find some stuff. And some could be just downright liars, just out here lying and twist the stuff around or to clean the thing up. A lot of people feel it's been whitewashing, and so much whitewashing with history that we need blackwashing. Folk lied back then, and now we need a lie to clean up the lie that they did. But is that proper? I'm gonna go ahead back and play some of this video, and we're gonna pick it up from there. Fair use.
That are Messianic are still Jews. You can't stop being Jewish. It's not physically possible. I mean, most mainstream Judaism considers Reform Jews or agnostic Jews to still be Jews, even when they don't even obey any of the Torah. But why not Messianics, who, for the most part, do obey the Torah? I mean, there are a few that, but there's some in every sect of every religion, really. So physically, Messianic Jews are still Jews. But are they also Christians? Can't quite get that eyebrow thing down. Well, what does the word Christian really mean? So it turns out that in the 1st century CE, initial followers of Yeshua were mockingly referred to as Christians, which means Christ follower. And as we all know, the word Christ comes from the Greek Christos. No, let me try that again. Christos. I'm terrible at Greek accents, which is a Greek translation of the Hebrew word Mashiach, and the English translation of that is Messiah. So it literally meant Messiah follower, but mockingly. Like, it was sort of like saying, look, they follow their Messiah, and then someone who like blindly follows this guy. So that phrase was used very disparagingly against the original followers. But over time, the name stuck. Kind of like how Jesus freak was originally very derogatory, and now it's kind of how a lot of teenagers are referring to themselves now. So I guess, yes, in a technical sense, then Messianics are Christian in that they follow Messiah. So why do a lot of Messianics tend to try to disassociate themselves from Christianity? Well, a large part comes from the historical baggage that tags along with that word, especially when you're mentioning it to Jews. Because historically, one of the most ruthless persecutors of the Jews has been Christians. So when you mention you're a Christian to a Jew, it really doesn't produce warm fuzzies. So to summarize, we are technically Christians, but we definitely do not practice the religion Christianity. Now, granted, there's a sect called Hebrew Roots that I would say much more practices Christianity with just like learning about the holidays and stuff, but it's not really Judaism. But that's separate from Messianic Judaism. And Judaism, the religion at its core, is obeying the Torah. No other religion obeys the Torah. Granted, they can take parts from it, but they don't take the entire package, because that is Judaism. So Jews that obey the Torah and love and worship Hashem, they practice Judaism. You know, I think part of this problem stems from the fact that there's a very wide spectrum of opinions on various matters of halakha, but it's not officially been canonized as mainstream Judaism has. It's kind of a free-for-all, I guess, you'd say. That sounds wrong, but I mean... So if you met both a Reform Jew and a Hasidic Jew and they both said that they practice Judaism, you would be kind of confused about what that meant, what it meant to practice Judaism. Okay, maybe reform is the wrong word. Maybe something more like liberal observance.
I want to say something. When we start dealing with what people call this awakening and people getting woke and people dealing with information coming out with who's who, it seemed to be galvanizing people on one side or another as the information comes out. Someone asked yesterday, is this thing just going on in the quote unquote black church? And I was saying that when we deal with the internet, this Hebrew roots thing, which is largely involved with, started by and spearheaded by the European church, that people need to put down holidays and pick up holy days and things of that nature. The sacred name, what's his real name, the name you get saved under, and all of this other stuff. That it's being divided in a way in certain communities and groups. It's being divided along racial lines. I'm real, y'all fake. I was telling y'all about the book, all the old books that I had to go digging up, and I've been going through, you know, as I bring them back upstate here with me. And one book I had back in the days that I'm gonna lay into now. I think I'm gonna go over the highlighted points in here. I think I read it 2-3 times. It's called The Bible Myth: The African Origins of Jewish People, from Gary Greenberg. I'm gonna deal with a little bit of that right there. And all these things are troubling as this information come out. All these things are troubling. And what's so crazy is because of what happened not so long ago. When was the Holocaust? How many years? 45? When they say 44 in the 40s? How long? 70-something years? Whatever. Y'all do the math. My math not quick. I'm not quick like that with my calculations. Since the Holocaust, some people have gone through some stuff, so it's heightened for them to hear certain people making statements. They always been, even before the civil rights movement, from the 1860s, even before the 1860s, when they say we're going to let the slaves go and all of that stuff, people were a little bit worried. When we let them go, what they going to do? Where they going to go? They gonna want they're gonna want some rights and some liberties and citizenship. And so they always been watching. We know with COINTELPRO later on what end up happening, dealing with different leaders, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and J. Edgar Hoover, FBI being on the scene, COINTELPRO when we deal with Malcolm X, Nation of Islam. They had their eye on W.D. Fard. He talking about he a man from the East and he come with these different teaching, the Moors and the Moor Science Temple. So we've had Black Power groups, we've had super strong invisible groups like the Invisible Empire of the Ku Klux Klan, or an organization that moved around, secret society can say, that moved around, and come to find out that a lot of people that weren't even involved in the Klan, they had a leniency towards them. They understood that they were here as protectors, quote unquote protectors. These people that had propaganda they've been using, Birth of a Nation and the highly sexually charged, the black man and the pure white woman got to be protected, and this stuff spread real fast and real strong, and there's a lot of sentiments to this stuff. We're seeing elements of this stuff everywhere. So they were never dismantled. I like what KRS-One said. We are the hoods of the Klanmen. How come we can't find them in the used goods stores? How come we can't find their stuff in the pawn shop? Because they never got rid of it. It's hanging in somebody's closet. It's memorabilia somewhere. And the mindset is passed down from someone's grandfather to the children right now that certain people don't belong in our neighborhood. Certain people are not good for our neighborhood. And a lot of this come with some people. Somebody hit me and said, well, what's the beef you got with the camp? Main beef I got with the camps is the level of broad brushing. Every single pastor eat pork. Every single pastor is a pork chop. Every single pastor is uneducated. Every single church member got a Christmas tree. Every single church member spreading on running around here teaching Easter eggs. They got Easter eggs in every church and want to corrupt your pure my every single church. And I don't like the broad brushing. I don't like the broad brushing. I try to get in touch with that other minister. There was a video out there, and you know, they'll take anything, and different camps go and do different things. It seems like IUIC, we were discussing that. That's Israel United in Christ. It's the purple dudes. They make it their business to get in front of churches. Now you won't see other groups in front of churches like that, but they make it their business to get in front of churches, and that's how they get their video and their cut. They specialize in chopping and screwing. They'll specialize in getting a little bit of footage. One of our brothers in the community, they got some footage with him making comments, and then they spend another 15, 20 minutes on giving commentary on the statement that they made, but you didn't show what led up to him making the statements that he made. And this is what some people do. So a lot of people are out. So we got to be careful, because broad brushing, the same thing with the Klan. All these black men just want white women and all of this stuff. Where are you getting this stuff from? This is all part of propaganda. All of this is part of propaganda, and they want to push fear. They're going to be taking our jobs. They're going to be raping your women. Who do want their women raped? So now people, that was something, that type of propaganda was something that helped the Klan grow. So propaganda works with hatred and broad brushing and all of these things, and a lot of people don't know. So the tools that people claim, that the elite, that the kings and the priests and people involved in religion back in the days in Europe and in other countries, not just trying to demonize Europe, and in other countries have come through propaganda. Now those tools are trickling down to the average person. The average person know to use these tools and how to manipulate and how to spin a story. Women been spinning stories for the longest. Oh, he did to me. Women, there's a lot of women out here that got brothers in some serious jammed up. So y'all heard about the rapper the other day. He in the stripper house, her ex-husband, they just broke up a little. They wasn't broke up that long, but he came in the house, he seen him in there, he hit him. Tried to run outside to the car to get to him. Too late, he was already hit up. He ended up dying outside, running to his car or whatever. But he up in the house with a woman. She spent one story. He didn't think it was what it was and got himself killed. This stuff is dangerous with propaganda and the stories that people are pushing and people are promoting. And then on top of that, we got plenty of information. Then on top of that, we have people lying. So let me share some of this right here. I want to show y'all a few of these right here. And one video I'm going to play. Like I said, I'm getting ready to get out of here. But I said, let me start by sharing some of this stuff. So when I jump on later on, it won't be a problem. I like getting rid of some of these things here. I'm not sure if y'all know the professor. Follow the professor here. I want to play some of this. Is this the right one? I think it's the right one. Fair use.
I'm afraid there's a serious problem with this document used by Hebrew Israelites because it misrepresents the study published by Louisiana State University in 1992. Here's the original table. It says nothing about Hebrews. It does have the port city correct. It has the numbers correct. It misspells the names of some of the ships. And notice that it's on page 70, as you can see in Google Books. It's not from the back of the book. You'll also see that the word Hebrew does not appear in the book. Now, I'm not disputing the general narrative of the Hebrew Israelites. What I'm saying is that this particular book does not provide any evidence for it.
I'm going to play that one more time. Some people would hear that and some people would start feeling hate. He's trying to stop the awakening, but we're telling people to look at sources. One of the things that a lot of people, one of the problems that a lot of people have is when people start making claims, when certain people that's involved in research go back and look for the claims. Either the claims aren't there. There's claims made about Hitler and what Hitler said about black people in America, how we're the special chosen people and this and that, and that the United States know it and all of this other stuff. There's some memes and there's some statements and there's some things that are going around that's not real. And a lot of times when people find out that something isn't real and they put that information out, people feel violated that you went and checked my information. People catch an attitude. And we're going to see more and more. That's how I said it's going to be a crazy summer with more information coming out. And as the information come out, people get attitudes, people making rebuttal videos and all of that. That's how come some people would say, listen, just in the spirit of unity, we gotta fall back from that. Just leave that alone. But is it right to come here, deal with something, have that thing thoroughly debunked? If you're an honest person, Alton, when you go and use it again somewhere else on another side, when you go Clubhouse using the same information when it's been thoroughly debunked, are you an honest researcher? Are you honestly trying to share the truth and help your people out? Or are you being scandalous at this point? And we got some people out here that's scandalous. Now, there are some things that's ongoing. So we can never tell anybody shut it down. And we've seen examples of that here just on this channel in community, dealing with people back and forth in information. And people are very, very touchy. So then when you get people like this professor here and they don't have an axe to grind and they're not making no listen, I'm not making no claim for this or that who's right. Because you can make a lot of statements and a lot of people out here, they're not going to bother you based on your statements, especially when the movement starts getting traction. Don't buck against that movement. Them people are going to be offended. We got the whole rainbow folk up there. They want to be dressed up. They want to go in any bathroom. They want to say, listen, I'm a woman, but I was a man, and you're going to respect me, and I want you to call me Mrs. And when the movement start growing, nobody want to offend nobody. So this, listen, whatever you want to be called, whatever you were born as, no matter what you look like on the outside, we got to play the game. Now we're forced to play the game. And that got some people offended. And because of things like that, it's going to get more dangerous. So a lot of this have to do with information and misinformation. And people will start getting hate emails and things of that nature. People will start spreading around. Look at what he just said. He tried to stop the awakening. And then start getting, instead of questions and looking into things, people start spewing in their mail, in their commentary, coming in people chats, coming on people TikToks, and saying crazy stuff because they feel some type of way. People are taking these things hard. I'm gonna play it one more time and get to another one.
Serious problem with this document used by Hebrew Israelites because it misrepresents the study published by Louisiana State University in 1992. Here's the original table. It says nothing about Hebrews. It does have the port city correct. It has the numbers correct. It misspells the names of some of the ships. And notice that it's on page 70, as you can see in Google Books. It's not from the back of the book. You'll also see that the word Hebrew does not appear in the book. Now, I'm not disputing the general narrative of the Hebrew Israelites. What I'm saying is that this particular book does not provide any evidence for it. Please follow me for more fact-checking and analysis about religious controversies. I'm afraid there's a serious problem with this.
And I like how he said, please follow me for more for religious controversies. People feel it's going to be heightened and it's extra attention now because more and more people are emailing, coming in Jewish comment sections and saying stuff to Jewish people. So like I said, professors are paying attention to this now. Rabbis are paying attention to this. When I went and I talked to the rabbis in Brooklyn, they already noticed that everybody's trying to be a Jew, Israel. So many people are under the impression now these people are speaking. Now these people are sharing. Now rabbis are saying stuff. Professors are saying stuff. When they start writing for these college books, when they start writing, are they going to do what so many others have done? Are they going to broad brush? Some people come through and they're really just researching what are these other groups? Who are these other groups? What do these other groups believe? And this is very important for where we're going. A lot of people want to take it lightly and just think it's a joke. And to be honest, the disrespect, the folk that's going in different people comment sections and being disrespectful and cussing them folk out, and you faking, you ain't nothing, all right, that's that angry black man. That's that, and I can't lie, the angry black man gets the attention of the feds. Now, maybe that ain't who gonna pick up the hammer and they need to be dealing with, but in all reality, they get the attentions of the Fed. These guys angry and they on the corner hollering. Look at even Christians. Look how some people would automatically line up the camps with the KKK. I'm scratching my head saying, what in the devil is this? How can you even fix your mouth? But if black folk can fix their mouth, to line, somebody said, well, they do got the potential for doing A, B, C, and D, but Black Power movement's been talking for a long time. if you add up the amount of killings from them as opposed to the Klan and Phineas priesthood and different chosen organizations of European people, or if you add it up, and if you were honest, I'm talking about being honest. Yeah, it hurts me, but a lot of y'all can't be honest. A lot of y'all don't want to be honest because y'all want to see damage done to people because you got a different belief from the same book. You feel they're twisting your book, so put them on the list. Get rid of them. They need to be gotten rid of. Now that's where I take a. Now that's where I get off the bus. Stop. I'm getting off this bus right here because now y'all gonna turn it into something else. So it's being heightened. I'm gonna let me stop this. I'm gonna play one more from him, and I'm gonna show you another video. I'm gonna show you some messianics. I'm gonna show you some rabbis. Now it's coming across their desk. And reactions are important. Who answer, who speak up for the people. No, this is what we believe, Rabbi. This is what those people believe, Bishop. This is what they believe. Now, you can say what you want. All of this stuff is coming to a height right now. But we got, being there, like we have a channel, I have a channel, different people have channel. There's plenty footage. This is how they do with the RICO. You see them dudes down there in Atlanta. There's plenty footage. They bringing up the rap music. He said, I got hitters following me. They going back. The state troopers pulled them cats over. They in a Rolls Royce. The dudes in the back of them in the Benz with plenty hammers. That's their security. The dudes in the front. They going off of the songs. These dudes, they don't want to give them bail. It's a good chance these dudes ain't coming home. This is serious business. So now, just like they going off of their songs to get that RICO, they're going to go off of statements that people have been making in videos. Mind yourself. Think back to what you done came on here saying, one on all them other channels saying, type it in people comments saying, talking about you hitting hard, you showing, I'm going to show these devils, and mind yourself. You going to get yourself up in some stuff you don't want. Now, you got it now. If you feel that's dying for the cause and you got to stand for something and I'm a prophet of y'all told me, all right, go ahead if y'all told you. But if it's just your opinion and you just running your mouth and your feelings getting the best of you and you just saying some wild stuff, you got to face the consequences. Let me let this play right here. Oh, fair, I got to say fair use and all that other stuff. All right, is this one? What's the next one? No, that's the one to bother the people. All right, let me play this right here.
Here's a question to consider. Is Reform Judaism actually a Judaism? Let me preface my remarks by saying, I'm not arguing that Reform is legitimate, valid, or authentic. Indeed, some Jews believe that they are heretics, apostates, and not a valid form of Judaism. I do not try to adjudicate such theological and moral disputes, but I can assure you that Reform is a form of Judaism, as understood by their own self-definition, by common knowledge, and the Association of Jewish Studies and other scholars.
Now, the Association of Jewish Studies and all of that, listen to what he's saying, because all of this is coming to the forefront in light of the conversations that we were having. Last night, we were getting it in. I'm aggravated. I'm tired and aggravated, and they going in. But we have to look at some stuff. And when I was closing out yesterday, I said, well, we got to look at some stuff when we start dealing with different groups and the charge, especially the people that's making charges here in America. Are these charges here in America, are they unique? Do different people have different forms of what they call this awakening? What they call the awakening are the Limba people, are the Igbo people, are the Ethiopian Jews, are they part of this? Is the rabbi part of this? Are these professors part of this? How do they understand it? And people are looking and studying, how do we understand this movement that's being made in America with these people in light of the Ethiopian Jew, in light of Limba, in light of Igbo, in light of other Jews in Africa, Jews in Spain, and different parts of the world. We have more and more the Inquisition coming up. We're talking about Judaizers and heretics and and things of that nature. So now it's taken on a larger scale. It's just not on the corner right now. It's just not in a church right now. It's just not in a hotel, in a conference room right now, or on the media, or some corners of social media. It's taking on a larger scale, coming into mainstream. Somebody said that other guy's important because he done brought these European evangelicals to this is these guys, this is what you call One West, this is that, and has established himself as a professional teaching and sharing this information. So now other people are saying, let me look at this stuff. Besides, nobody can have a platform that say anything Jewish and be light-skinned without a whole bunch of people. You know how many people they say because of the comment section, I gotta turn the comment section off. That worries some people because of the quote unquote hateful speech. And then when they look at the names and the pictures of the hateful speech, who you think the hateful speech coming from? It's all over, but who you think it's coming from on certain topics? All right, let me stop this, and now I can aggravate y'all with some of this right here. And now, well, just pastors, pastors, rabbis, different people just saying what it is. Let me see if I can find out. I hope this ain't all right, let me see. It gotta be right here. All right. Let's look at this for a second. Fair use. Let me mute myself.
Greetings, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of ATP Ask the Pastor. Today, we have a question about, well, modern messianic movements. Dear Pastor, my question is about messianic movements that exist in modern society, such as Messianic Judaism and the Black Hebrew Israelites. Are the Jewish people today no longer God's chosen people? And can any Christian really truly convert to Judaism by way of some of these messianic movements that I have just mentioned? All right, so we need to say right off the bat that the four sects of Judaism all agree that neither Messianic Jews or Black Israelites are actual Jews. In fact, that's probably the only thing that all four sects.
That gonna bother some people right there. That gonna bother some people right there. Let me go back.
Greetings, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of ATP Ask the Pastor. Today, we have a question about, well, modern messianic movements. Dear Pastor, my question is about messianic movements that exist in modern society, such as Messianic Judaism and the Black Hebrew Israelites. Are the Jewish people today no longer God's chosen people? And can any Christian really truly convert to Judaism by way of some of these messianic movements that I have just mentioned? All right, so we need to say right off the bat that the four sects of Judaism all agree that neither Messianic Jews or Black Israelites are actual Jews. In fact, that's probably the only thing that all four sects of Judaism agree on. So it's not possible for a Gentile to convert to Judaism through either of these two movements. Let's take a minute, though, to explore this. And as we do, it's important to remember that both movements, or rather both of these things are movements. They're not monoliths. And so there's a lot of variation between Messianic congregations and also then Black Hebrew Israelite groups as well. So let's look at Messianic Jews first. So Messianic Jews are people of Jewish heritage who believe that Jesus, or Yeshua, is the Messiah and want to retain their Jewish identity. Now, much of that Jewish identity, in their view, consists of the law of Moses, such as Old Testament festivals, weekly Sabbath observance.
Wait a minute. John Tony said, God prays to the dead, can't trust him. He's a joke. You're under the impression that he's Catholic because he got this shirt and that collar on. You think that he's a Roman Catholic? That's why you say that right there? Is he Roman Catholic to y'all because he got this garb on right here? That's a question for you. I know y'all a couple of seconds behind. I'm gonna let it keep praying. But do y'all think you don't think Protestant elders, Protestant reverence wear this right here? Fair use.
Circumcision and the dietary restrictions. Now, by identifying much of Mosaic law as their cultural identity, what they end up doing is separating themselves from the rest of Christianity. Now, this is intentional on the part of many Messianic Jews because they simply don't want to be assimilated into the church and become functionally Gentile. Other congregations, though, go further by laying necessity upon Mosaic law, especially on circumcision, because they believe that the Jews are special participants in God's covenant with Abraham in a way that Gentiles cannot be. To all of this, though, St. Paul writes in Romans chapter 2, verses 28 and 29, that it's not the physical circumcision that makes one a member of God's chosen people, but, he says, circumcision is that of the heart, in the spirit, not in the letter. The Mosaic law isn't a matter of Jewish culture, it's a matter of Jewish religion. The law, on top of all of this, has served its purpose since Messiah has come. St. Paul says as much in Galatians 3, 24 and 25. He says that the law was our tutor to bring us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith.
This just a rabbi. I'm showing them how the movement is growing, and there's different professors and different people that's looking and watching and listening to certain stuff. Man, Garfield, why you talking? You talking greasy yesterday on Sinetta. You said the movement ain't gonna be around in another 20 years. Good to see y'all out there on that bill. I ain't get to watch all of it because I went ahead and got live, but we definitely laid into some of that, and you definitely talking good, telling them, listen, no matter what, the church been there, and that's just facts. Sometimes people don't like the facts. Let this keep playing and read some of these comments. Fair use.
But after faith has come, we are no longer under a tutor. Not even the Jews then are under obligation to live according to Moses. Because, as he says in Colossians 2, 16 and 17, the commandments by Moses are a shadow of the things to come, but the body, the one casting that shadow, is Christ. Now, believing that the covenant with Abraham consists of more than simply Christ.
Yes, Plumber, exactly.
Reject the idea that the church is the continuation or the fulfillment of the Old Testament church, the Old Testament Israel. They believe that the Old Testament prophecies about the Israelites returning, being restored to their land, are literal, not metaphorical prophecies about the church. So, therefore, many of them believe that the reestablishment of the state of Israel after World War II is part of God's end time plan. Yet, Paul again teaches the exact opposite in Galatians 6, 15 and 16, where he writes that the Israel of God consists of those who walk according to this rule or canon, that in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision avails anything but a new creation. Israel is all believers in Christ, regardless of ethnicity. Jesus also tells the Jews in John 8:39, if you were Abraham's children, you would do the works of Abraham. Now, what did Abraham do? Well, Moses writes in Genesis 15:6 that he believed God, and God credited that faith to him as righteousness.
Now, I'm not going to lie, on top of the dispensational beliefs and the 1,000-year reign. Oh yeah, I put this. I'm going to play a video that's going to touch a little bit on the subject of the Romans, because that's where people think the whole shift took place, where the Romans weren't involved in the religion and they were persecuting the Jews. And then later on, there were people in Rome, and the Rome end up accepting the religion or the movement, and where a lot of that stuff come from. I got something lined up that'll touch on some of that right there. But it's and we're going to see if it's drawn along the color lines. Garfield, these people, we've been laying into Isabella and Ferdinand, the King and the Letter, and all of this stuff. And the question is coming up now, because most people in the church, almost everybody, have always accepted the expulsion of the Jews in the 1400s and the Moors and all of that stuff. But the problem comes in that we never looked at all of those people as being black people and end up coming over here in the cotton fields. Those were the same business people that got ran out of Spain. Fair use.
Righteousness. This is why Paul in Romans 4:11 can call Abraham the father of all who believe. Now, Paul also writes in Romans 9, 6-8, for they are not all Israel who are of Israel, nor are they all children because they are the seed of Abraham, but in Isaac your seed shall be called. That is, those who are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as the seed. Children of the promise are those who believe the promise, those who are brought about by the promise of the preaching of the gospel, believing just as Abraham did before God gave him circumcision as a seal of the righteousness of faith, as Paul says in Romans 4:11. Bottom line here is what matters is faith, not foreskin.
Within 2
All right, I want to stop that right there. And part of the problem is, matter of fact, let me hold on. Let me see something right now. Part of the problem is people asking. That's how come some people it said it leads to endless genealogies. Let me ask you a question. Hold on. Let me play this first right here. Garfield, listen to this.
Egyptians are North African. I'm being specific. They're Mediterranean. I'm being specific. I'm taking it away from you Afrocentrics and you thieves of history called Afrocentrics. You can no longer be that. You cannot be Mediterranean. That's why I use the word, to piss y'all off. And to make it clear that the ancient Egyptians and the modern day Egyptians are not you or related to you in any kind of shape, form, or fucking fashion. Asante gang, what's happening? West Side.
Excuse language.
Someone said West Africa for life. West Side, Asante gang, we banging. The Egyptians are North African. I'm being specific. They're Mediterranean. I'm being specific. I'm taking it away from you Afrocentrics and you thieves of history called Afrocentrics. You can no longer be that. You cannot be Mediterranean. That's why I use the word, to piss y'all off. And to make it clear that the ancient Egyptians and the modern day Egyptians are not you or related to you in any kind of shape, form, or fucking fashion.
Now, this is the problem when we go back to the origin and how it's I can't say a little shaky. Some people would argue that the origin of the Hebrews is a little shaky. Let's just put it that way. And that's how come the whole thing with the professors and all of them, a lot of them teachers back in days had to do with the color of the people. That's what I'm saying. People are gonna, this thing is just galvanizing folk on a color side. I'm black, you and that's how I often ask the question is, does this thing have to do with color when we come down to a people and the people that move together following some laws, statutes, commandments, and call themselves a nation? Were they just dissatisfied Canaanites? Were they a brand like Greenberg arguing? Were they a lower class Egyptians that just separated with a priest with some ancient priests, and Moses just happened to be the leader of them, and he took the dissatisfied out and went and did his thing? We got to look at all this, but I just played that to see what his thoughts were on that, because I know he like bothering people bringing that stuff up right there. I wanted to show you this. I think that would lead to some other stuff when we start dealing with that history of these people in general when we start talking about the Messianic movement. Let me see. Is it this one I wanted? This one, or is it this one?
This is from Jeff. Jeff is asking an interesting question here. It says, could you shed some light on the history of the Messianics? It seems like the teachers, who are the oldest in the movement, are very young. The church takes their big kickoff date at 325-ish. And can we assume that the Messianics broke off or kept going strong at that point also? Or is it that we are nuts who just started actually thinking and being moved by the Spirit to actually hear what God is saying? Any insight that you could have would be wonderful. I was just wondering what happened from 325 until the present. What is?
Now I want everybody. Now the only thing I don't go with is the that Thomas thing. But I want everybody else to listen and type in. Tell me the points that you think he's making, where he's on point with something, and tell me the point where where you think he's off. But listen to how he freestyled this history.
Is our story. Can you help me fill in some of the 1600-year gap? Well, I can only give you my consensus, my position on trying to understand church history. The 325-ish date that he's referring to is what's called the Nicene Conference. And in the Nicene Conference, there was all of the church scholars had been invited to come, and the questions that they were to answer were to try to sort out, in fact, was Yeshua, the Son of God, was he God? That was one of the first issues they were trying to sort out. And secondly, they were trying to sort out how many gospels should we really have to constitute the New Testament, the compilation of the writings, and to sort some of those issues out. Well, they came away from the thing saying that they believed that Jesus was God, and they agreed on a 4 gospel set. They left the Gospel of Thomas out. The Gospel of Thomas, that was written by Thomas, just didn't affirm the deity of Yeshua strong enough for them. And so they, because he was a doubter, that's his reputation, they left his gospel out for compiling into what later became known as the canon, the church canon, the authorized books that constitute what we call the New Testament today. So there's a lot of people say, well, this is when the church fathers kind of got their act together and began to go forward. Well, in history, let me just go ahead and say this. This is when the church fathers definitely took a posture to not listen to other Jewish believers, is what it really was. That some of that had already been going on, but they didn't invite any Jewish believers to this conference. And so they basically made decisions without the benefit of the Jewish believers that were still with them at that time, and marched off into what we call the church age. Now, for the last 1600, 1700 years, the church and the church fathers have rejected any testimony coming from a Jewish believer. They just cut them off. And the real breach took place in 160 AD. In 160 AD, the Bar Kokhba Revolution, that was a nationalistic war between Rome and Israel. And the Jewish believers sided with Israel. The Gentile believers sided with Rome. I mean, we had the same thing in World War II. German believers, Protestant Christians, sided with Germany at odds with the Allies and Americans. And one of the reasons why America, after World War II, became the seat of Protestant Christianity, evangelical Christianity, is because, quite honestly, it was taken away from the Germans, who used to be the head of Protestant Christianity in the world. And it was because of World War II. Well, the same thing happened way back early on. There was a separation of Jewish believers from Gentile believers way back historically. So what has been transpiring up until this generation? Well, basically, that separation, that cutting off, continued until Israel became a nation again. And we as Messianic believers are caught up in the life of the modern state of Israel because that history is now returned. As opposed to when it was rejected back in those earlier days. So what happened in between? Well, I've read some books that talk about certain individual believers who were in fact Jewish believers who were instrumental in various things. One of them that is absolutely fascinating has to do with the Queen of Spain and Columbus. That it's believed that Columbus was in fact, a Jewish believer. And part of the reason why he secured the funds to try to find the New World was because of the oppression of Jews in Spain. And they were trying to find another land that the believers could escape to. As you recall, part of the story of the New World is that there were religious people who believe in God, trying to get away from religious oppression on them to come to the New World. Columbus was certainly part of that. The Pilgrims was part of that, that was coming out of Europe. And so it's interesting that the Messianic Jews of this day should emerge within the United States of America and these Western countries and then spread out from there. It's kind of the ongoing history where God promised that the remnant might be small, but the remnant wouldn't go away, that he would maintain the remnant. Within the modern Messianic movement of it today, I myself trace myself back My mentor was a man by the name of Eliezer Urbach. He was a missionary to the American Board of Missions to Jews. The guy who mentored him was Leopold Kohn, who was a Levite Jew who became a believer in New York. He formed the first organization reaching out to the Jewish people. Before that, before he was Orthodox, but he was in this country and so forth. And from those roots, some of those earliest roots, many of the Messianic leaders can trace themselves back. And in the case of Eliezer Urbach, some of the leading members of the Messianic movement have been influenced by Eliezer and the work that he did with a host of brethren. Some of the major leaders and organizations, were under the covering and tutelage of our brother Eliezer, who has passed on. So it's a little bit like the renewal when the New Testament period, when it first happened. There was a series of several decades where the apostles began to disciple and there were more believers. And we see the same thing being repeated in our generation. I always remind everybody, from the resurrection until you see really established leadership in the faith, like the deacons being talked about in Acts 8, 30 years had gone by. It took 30 years from the resurrection before you had really established leadership, before the apostles began to operate. Why? Well, we don't think these young men that were at the resurrection were much over 20 years old. We think Peter was the oldest, and he may have only been about 19. So you add 30 years to it, and now all of a sudden the apostles are now at the age of 50, which would be recognized as elders and leaders by the peoples. That's when you see them beginning to operate, really begin to operate. Looking back at the modern Messianic movement, the modern Messianic movement's only been going on about 40 years. And it really, my part wasn't until about 35 years ago. And I look back over the years of what has transpired, and I can tell you the growth is just leaps and bounds. And to the point now where the person who comes in the Messianic movement today learns concepts and comes to terms with things in about 3 months. I remember me coming to terms with those concepts. It took 10 years, to get comfortable with what do we believe and how do we deal with this. Simple things: Sabbath, kosher. What do we do about Christmas? How do we keep the appointed times? Basics. I mean, it took us years. By the way, some of my Messianic brethren still haven't made it through the transition that was started out. But today, most people come in and get through that transition very quickly. So that gives you a sense of that. Believe me, today in this generation, there's a lot more going on that's been going on for the last 1,700 years. In fact, I had one rabbi who did make this comment to me many years ago. He said, it seems to him that more Jews had become believers in Yeshua in the last 19 years than in the previous 1,900 years. And I had to agree with it. And I said, part of the reason why that is because there could have been believers back there in those other years, but you didn't hear about them because they were always suppressed. No one would cooperate with them. They were considered to be too radical, too outside of the common thing. And so that's the reason why you don't hear a lot about them. But the Lord said he would maintain a remnant. He's been faithful to that. We have a remnant still today, but the remnant today is growing.
Alton, I want to hear specifically from Alton. Alton, what say ye on what you heard? Grace and peace. Your microphone. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you. All right. I don't know what. Hello. All right. I don't know what he got. I don't know what he got going on there. He was unmuted, but it don't sound like I'm not sure if he was trying to work that thing out there. All right, Alton, you heard that? What you heard that, Alton? Now I know you ain't agree with everything, but I'm watching. Fair use.
Good morning. It's great to be with you again for this second lecture in the series of 3. And Today we're looking at the history of Messianic Jews. I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation on my screen with you. We will have 2 sessions of about 30 minutes each with a time for pause. And I do hope that you'll come back to me with some comments and questions. And my email is on the PowerPoint slides. And also you can contact me in other ways on my website and also on my YouTube channel called Jew in the Pew. So today we are looking at the history of Messianic Jews.
I can't. Grace Peace, what's good? What's good for every charity? I can't turn it up no higher. I just saw somebody tell me if it's too low. He said his phone messing up. Tell me if it's too low. If it's too low, I think he did besides the slides, I think he did a public lecture that I can play some of that. I want y'all to look at it because now we're looking at, like I said, we always believed in the history dealing with the Jews being ran out of different parts of Europe, like Spain, Portugal, and other places. And we want to look at why they said they were ran out, for what reason. Because now all of a sudden the tables are turning. We're hearing it's a different thing. It's for a different reason. Some people are saying, dealing with the subject of Judaizing or whatever, but others have claimed some different things. And on top of that, now people are saying that those would be what some would look at and consider minorities today. It wasn't how you think it is when you hear the word Jew and you see actors on television in Hollywood. But we're going to get into the history and then we'll deal with what the people specifically look like, because that's where the whole main beef is coming into. And now, like I said, all of this stuff is coming in mainstream, and all of this stuff now is being connected with church history. And so people are looking at this church history in light of some claims that made from what you would call American blacks. Fair you.
Session, I shared my own personal story, how I became a Jewish disciple of Yeshua, of Jesus. And today we are looking at something of the history of Messianic Jews. And then in the third lecture, we will look at their theology and their beliefs. When we look at the history of Messianic Jews, we of course have to look at the 2 major faith communities of Jews and Christians, because Jewish Christians are both Jewish and Christian. You get the best of both worlds. You get Saturdays off and Sundays. That's a joke, by the way. You get 8 days of Hanukkah presents at the Feast of Hanukkah, and you get Christmas presents. But you also have double the headaches, because you're part of the sad and often difficult and painful history between 2 major world religions and faith communities.
Now, another reason I'm playing this here, Alton, is because what we would call the brothers and sisters that come around that we would call Christian Israelites, Christian Jews, that want to keep those days, those feasts, and ethnically say that they descended from them folk inside that book. That's very important that we bring this point out, because like I'm saying, we putting down what they look for a minute. We'll pick that back up. But we want to try to trace this doctrine of folk that been claiming this, that will believe us from the gate. That's what we want to do right here, Alton. So listen, like you like type it in there, listen up. Good to see you, Sister Foster.
The Jewish community and the Christian community. So what I'm going to do in this lecture is to divide up the material into a discussion of our terminology that we use, and then look at these major periods in the history of Jewish Christianity, the New Testament period, the Church Fathers, the Middle Ages, the Reformation, the modern period, and then since the time of the formation of the State of Israel and the Holocaust, and then come to some general conclusions and observations. The book by Hugh Schoenfield, written in the 1930s, is called The History of Jewish Christianity. It's probably one of the few books written that really traces the history of Jewish disciples of Jesus throughout the centuries. But there are many other detailed studies of Jewish disciples of Jesus in different periods. For example, I have the book somewhere. I will show it you later on the history of Jewish disciples of Jesus in the biblical and apostolic times. Let me first of all just define our terms a bit more clearly. You have probably already discussed this, but even the name Israel and Jew is often under discussion because it means different things to different people at different times. Of course, in the Bible, particularly the first 5 books of the
Oh, Plumber, you said that day. He said that was. Oh well, I just ordered that yesterday. That one, and there's another one I can show you that I just ordered them too.
The Old Testament, the Pentateuch, the term used is Hebrew, which is from a Hebrew root avar, which means to cross over, just as Abraham crossed over from Mesopotamia, from Ur in the Chaldees, into the land of Canaan. And it not only signifies crossing over geographically, but also crossing over spiritually from the worship of pagan gods to the worship of the one true God. Now, the name Israel, of course, is the name that is given to Jacob in the book of Genesis after he wrestles with the angel at Peniel. And there are different ways of translating the name. Nobody is quite sure how to translate it. Ish Sa'el, the man who is a prince with God. Ish Ra'el, the man who sees God. Ish Sara'el, the man who struggles with God. Or most likely, but we can't be 100% certain, Ish Yasha'el, the man who is righteous with God. And Israel becomes the name in the Old Testament for the 10 northern tribes in the land of Israel, and Judah is the name for the 2 southern tribes, Judah and Benjamin. But often the biblical writers employ a device called pars pro toto, the part representing the whole. So both Israel and Judah can represent the whole of the Jewish people. Israel today is, of course, the modern state of Israel, and an Israeli is a modern citizen of the modern state of Israel. And then the term Jew, which is translated really from the French and the German, Juif and Jude, comes to be in English Jew, originates from the tribe of Judah, the son of Jacob, named Judah or Yehudah, meaning praise. But even this word Jew is then not very common in the Old Testament, but is the normal word in the New Testament for a citizen of Israel, Judaios in the Greek. And Judaios, Iudaios, also can mean a citizen not just of Israel, but a Judean, someone who lives in the southern kingdom, particularly.
Hold on, maybe this is a side conversation right here. We need to understand that the 12 or Paul cannot change God's prophecy or God's word. What 12? The 12 apostles trying to change God's word? Or you Torah only? Even if Paul went to school does not mean he have authority of God and God wills be done and save his people. I don't know. Paul talks about God saving his people and God still doing the work in Israel. So I'm a little lost on unless this is a side conversation right here. There you.
In Jerusalem, part of the institution and the authorities in Jerusalem. So the Judaioi are sometimes contrasted with the Galileans who live in the north. Now, today, Jewish is more ethnic and cultural identity. It's about our people and our culture. But in the time of the New Testament, Judaios is more a religious identity, that not only are you from the tribe of Judah or from the province of Judea, but you are opposed to not Christianity, but Hellenismos, Hellenism, the culture and the language and the civilization of the Greeks. So in the Old Testament, Judaios is contrasted with Hellenos, Jew and Greek. And it's only in about the 4th or 5th century after the time of Christ that Jew is contrasted with the term Christian. In the Old Testament, a Judean was therefore a member of the tribe of Judah, of the province of Judah, or somebody from Jerusalem. And the word Judaismos is used in a couple of times in the Old Testament, not often, and a few times in the writings of Paul, to express the religion of Judaism, of the Judahites. But it is never contrasted with Christianity until after the time of the Bible. And Paul himself writes in Philippians that he was more advanced in Judaismos, in Judaism, than any of his opponents. The word Shem, Semite, is also used. It's an ancestor of the line of Shem through Abraham and then through Terah and Nahor and Abraham. So the Semites or Shemites are not only the Jews descended through Isaac, but also the Arabs descended through Esau and then through Ishmael. So Semite is a general term for any Semitic person, but in modern language, it's used as Jewish because the term anti-Semitism is normally meaning anti-Jewish. Now, who is a Jew? I expect you've discussed this already. There are several definitions. The definition of Orthodox Jews is anyone who has a Jewish mother or has converted to Judaism, which for a man involves circumcision, and for a woman and a man a ritual bath and immersion, and when the temple was still standing, sacrifice offered in the temple. So the Orthodox definition says, and this is a reference from the Talmud, thy son by an Israelite woman is called thy son, but thy son by a heathen woman is not called thy son. Now, Reformed Jews, and there are more Reformed Jews in America than there are Orthodox Jews, say it doesn't matter if it is your father is Jewish or your mother is Jewish. And in the Bible, Jewish descent goes through the father quite often. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are the.
All right, so you see what he say about the mother, and you see what he say, what the Bible say about the father. I made it small right here. I appreciate you, Ant. The History of Messianic Jews. That's the name of this right here. That's why I made it small. Fair you.
The founding fathers of the state of the Jewish people, and their children are counted as Jewish. It's a very complicated subject. I'm not going to go more deeply into this because we want to look at Messianic Jews, those who claim to be disciples of Jesus and are Jews. I wish I could have time to spend talking about the history of the Jewish people, because if we want to understand the history of Messianic Jews, we have to know quite well the history of our people. And here is one chart which shows you on just one page the complete history of the Jewish people from about 3,000 years before Jesus to the present day. And if you go on the website, www.odyeda.com, you can not only download this chart, but there are little guides to every event if you run your cursor on your web browser onto this. But I don't have time to say that the history of the Jewish people is vital to our understanding of the history of Messianic Jews, especially because Messianic Jews are caught in between the Jewish community and the Christian community, and they both connect the two. We are the missing link between Judaism and Christianity, but they are also the barrier. And when Jews and Christians are not being nice to each other, persecuting each other, denigrating each other, Jewish disciples of Jesus are caught in the middle. Now, I'm going to just carry on with my definitions for a moment, but there is some
I hope y'all ain't heard all of that. Let me hold on. I hope y'all. Oh no, no, no. I was just reading the comment in the comment section. I was saying I made two comments. I said I think it was Up Next said that was saying there was a lot of confusion and misapplications with the word. I was saying the term Jew later on became used for everybody. And most of the time when you people hear it used today, it's Jew, Hebrew, or Israelite. We know Hebrew was first. We know Israelite was used the most. Israelite was used the most, and then later on, it seems like at the closing of the New Testament that the word Jew meant everybody. So when you find tribes, it's 12 tribes, northern, Jew is everybody. Now I know y'all will say, no, Jew is just 3 tribes, Jews everybody, and that's how people are using it right now, every single person. The other person, somebody else said, this, I had this one up on the screen too, people are calling God a liar because he promotes the tribes that would save them from their sins, but some people are trying to say that God will save their enemies of his people and they don't have to pay. God's coming back to judge the wicked. The sinful, everybody going to get judged, but I think that's a misunderstanding of how the word is used in the Old Testament, the different ways the word salvation is used. I think that's where the confusion comes in. But Paul, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. Paul made it clear that God going to do something with his people. God ain't finished with his people. God is going to do something with his people. And the Bible says, let God be true and every man be a liar. The Bible is right and exact. Period. Fair use. That's what I said.
Other information in the slides about the cultural and the historic and the numbers of Jewish people, and talk about ourselves, myself as a Jewish disciple of Jesus. And although these terms seem quite similar, they are actually quite important to now understand the reasons why we use different terms for the same things. So I am a Messianic Jew, a Jewish disciple of the Messiah, Jesus. In fact, most Jews, if they are religious, are waiting for the Messiah to come. They don't believe it's Jesus, but they're still waiting for the Messiah. So in one sense, all Jews could be called Messianic. But in the modern times, since the 1950s and 60s, the term Messianic Jew has been particularly used of myself and others who are Jews who believe that Yeshua.
All right, look at this right here. Terry Weatherspoon said, Berean TV, how come all the information about Jews you present come from Jews themselves? Can you use other sources? Do you have a suggestion? Tell me if you have a suggestion. Suggest some names down in the comment section. Terry Witherspoon said, suggest some names. Suggest some names where you think Jews are lying because Jews are speaking about Jewish history. I got Jews. Like I said, I'm reading Gary Greenberg. I got Jews that's talking real greasy about Jews, about their own people. But let me hear some sources down here. Let me hear some of what you recommend. Fair use.
Jesus of Nazareth is the Messiah. Another term that is used to describe us is Jewish Christian. Now, the slight difference is that instead of Jew being the key word, the word is Christian. And in previous centuries, Jewish Christian was more popular because it said, I'm a Christian who happens to be Jewish. My faith is in Jesus, but my race is Jewish. And
Hold on, wait a minute. That's somebody said the protocols. Oh wait, no. Okay, that's something different. All right, that's something different. If one had a problem, they have to provide a solution. Yeah, I don't know how y'all ain't got no sound. He said the white bottle is necessary. I'm gonna be, matter of fact, you hear what the Ruddy Brew was saying? I'm telling you right now, for some believers, like I said, when I say believers, I mean Christians, when it comes to certain things, people would, and I told people I'm really paying attention to what the Jews have been saying. And what the Jews are saying concerning this conversation. To some people, the white bottle is more important. Nobody listening to you Israelites. Especially when we deal with the church world. The church ain't listening to y'all, what y'all got to say. We got to hear from outside sources. We got to hear from some other sources. Because most of the church, just to keep it a buck, believe that y'all are liars and y'all are just a black power movement. And because they found a few fake professors and scholars and statements and memes, they're going to say that y'all a bunch of liars and y'all confused. Some people say, well, that's like just saying the ice is cold on the other side. Whatever it is, people want to hear it and see what those other people say, and they'll accept it a little better. There's a method to this. We know what we're doing. We know what we're doing. I'm in the office with them preachers. I talk to them, Bishop. I know them. I know folk. I know what's going on, what's going to be easier for folk to accept. Now, if you don't think that's helping y'all, Berean say he ain't helping awakening. But trust me, I know what my people going to listen to. They ain't listening to a whole bunch of what y'all other folks said. That's talking about I scroll up on the other guy video. I said, no matter his video is 2 hours, we can't play it. Because automatically in their mind, he's a liar because he's part of the Black Israelite movement. But the 11-minute video from the light-skinned guy got more weight. I'm doing this for a reason. Fair use.
The Christian identity became the primary one, and Jewish was more a cultural and ethnic identity. And similar to this term, Jewish Christian, was the term used around 150 years ago when the Hebrew Christian Alliance was formed, and they called themselves Hebrew Christians. Now, why Hebrew and not Jewish? Because for them, Jewish was the religion, and they wanted to say, we're not religiously Jewish. We believe that only in Christ can we be saved by grace through faith, and not by keeping the religion of Judaism. So they gave themselves a more cultural identity of being Hebrew.
Now, Alton, this is very important now. He said about 150 years ago, talking about when people attempted to distinguish themselves, he said they gave themselves the term Hebrew. So now that's what we're talking about. Now we're getting somewhere. We're up next set. Now we're talking about Hebrews that believe in Jesus. And now, wait a minute, Alton. That's something I need Elder Green on here. And he's saying, and he's turning around and he's saying something different. He's saying that these are believers who some people would call Christians, but they're culturally doing some stuff where they believe that the Messiah is theirs. Now we might be getting somewhere. Now, because that's what most folk come around here, the New Testament. We were shocked we had an Old Testament guy yesterday. Most people come around saying they believe Jesus died for their sins, and they are Hebrews. They say we're the original folk. And this is us ethnically. Now we're going to see where it's going. Some people say this is make-believe. This comes from the United States of America. I'm just saying to my church people that I'm a little bit shocked because they say, well, you can't be a Hebrew, you can't be this, you can't be a Christian, say all of this stuff. But it seemed to be that there were Christian Israelites, but that is the most popular widespread term for all of them. More than Jew, Israelite is used more than Hebrew and Jew, the word Israelite. So when people say that there are Christian Israelites, people say that it's impossible that there's Christian Israelites. That's impossible because the Bible, if it don't use that term, they're trying to act like, yo, you got to use the term, you got to use the term. And I'm like, wait a minute, you got to be careful now because y'all don't press people when they run amok with the term Trinity, but y'all say it's in the Bible. So keep the same energy when it comes to Christian Israelites. Paul, they were first called Christians in Antioch, and Israelites was in Antioch that believed in the resurrection. They say, oh, you fighting too hard. I ain't fighting too hard. I'm trying to get an understanding, and I'm trying to show y'all that y'all might be missing something. Oh, but they liars. You know these folk are liars. And all right, they all liars. So you can't take their claim. Let's go somewhere else and see what the other people say. Because for some reason, when they hear from it depends who you're hearing it from. People go like, all right, now I can go for it. Now I know this ain't just black power. Now I know other people are acknowledging it. That's like I'm saying. Now that the conversation is blowing and going somewhere else, and it's going to touch light-skinned school kids in a college setting, what if this helped in any way? If going around on social media, listening to conversations and reading comments in any way, what image would y'all want them to have of y'all? Wild dogs just hollering, them wicked and cussing people out and going from social media site to social media site, acting like you part of the zoo? Or you want to represent us? I come from a thinking people. I come from a believing people. I come from intellectual people. I come from the people of God. What do y'all want to give them? Fair use.
Not just that they may have known Hebrew or spoken Hebrew, but that they had a Hebrew flavor in their culture and their nationality, but not their religion. Now, when scholars write about the New Testament and the Jewish disciples of Jesus in, for example, the Gospel of Matthew, in Paul's letter to the Romans, in the book of James, in the book of Hebrews, they often use the phrase Christian Jews. And that again puts the emphasis on the word Jew, but gives them the adjective Christian. Now, for scholars, this is okay, but for people like myself, Messianic Jews, we're a bit concerned about the word Christian because most people don't understand that the word Christian for Jewish ears means someone who has persecuted our people. So I think that the term Christian Jew is not a very popular one amongst Messianic Jews today, but certainly amongst scholars of the New Testament, Christian Jew is a common use.
This is where we say it's problematic because we got to first accept in the church that we terrorize Jewish people. But they don't want to act like the church got a criminal record. The church felt some type of way about Jewish people. This is why we see the idea of Klansmen or people that hate Jews that call themselves Christians. We see this going all the way from back in the days. They felt some type of way and they did some stuff. It's beef. So because we trying to clean up all of Christianity and don't want to bring stuff up, we acting like we crazy, like we ain't got no sense, like we don't know what people talking about. We acting like we ain't never heard of this before. What wrong did we do? You know that parent that want to go to school and act like their kid ain't never did nothing. They want to go up there. Matter of fact, they want to go up there and fight the teacher. I remember my ex called me talking about, listen, you better come up to these schools and check these kids and check this teacher and da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, what the teacher said? What the teacher said my baby did. And when she told her, I know myself. Now she's in denial. I said, now you don't think? She said, no. And I ain't playing it. She threatened me. I better come up there and straighten it out. Now I'm not coming up there to beef with them folk for them to call 12 and all of that stuff. Plus I know my baby. I'm going there. All right, let me sit down. She acting crazy. I'm coming in and I'm nice and calm. And she's acting all crazy, like she ready to get it in. I'm like, all right, you go ahead. Then don't be crying. Don't be crying, hitting my jack when you're in the back of that police car. Don't you do it. You got some days off? Don't you do it. Turn around and get up there. They got the evidence. They're like, oh no, she got a whole nother social media. This is her right here. So what they were saying, and I'm looking and I ain't saying nothing. And I ain't saying it because she want to go up there and that crazy. I ain't crazy. I know something crazy like that I'll do. We got to start admitting some stuff. That's all I'm saying. Fair use.
In the New Testament, they are also called Nazarenes, or followers of the way. And these terms do not say they're Jewish or they're Christian, but of course the Nazarenes, because they follow Jesus of Nazareth, and because of the prophecy about the Netzah, the root coming out of dry ground in the book of Isaiah. And then in the early church writings of Hegesippus, Eusebius, and others, they refer to them as Nazareans, followers of the Nazarene, or maybe from Nazareth, or maybe followers of the branch of David, the root that came from Jesse. And the term Judeo-Christian is used as a way of describing people who are both Jewish and Christian. It's another term.
Now, Alton, you'll in the years that I've known you, you'll correct yourself. You'll correct yourself if you're wrong. We have to ask ourselves now, did the church in any way demonize people that were called Nazarenes? Did we demonize them people? Or any of those terms of them people that seem to be those descendants that believed when the church started, like my man said, now the Gentiles driving the bus is a whole different story. When the church started growing and outweighing the number of people that were born ethnically, not eating pork, ethnically, and believing on Messiah, and this gospel message spread till the Gentiles became larger than the original disciples and their Israelite or the nationalistic Israel, those that were blood descendants. When the church got bigger, did the church flip? When they like, all right, now we control. Listen, we ain't studying y'all. We just listen. We the bishops right now. Y'all shut your mouth. We doing this. Do we have any evidence of that?
And then the general term Christian. Now, for Jewish people, Christian means anyone who has the name Christian, whether they are a genuine follower of Jesus, whether they have genuine faith or not. So even the people who persecuted the Jewish people in the name of Christ, the Crusaders, the Spanish Inquisition, even those who were in the Holocaust, the genocide of 6 million people, they are called Christians. You may say, but they weren't truly disciples of Jesus. I would agree. But for Jewish people, that is who they are. Now, I've discussed the terminology because I hope it helps you understand how when we look at the history of Messianic Jews, Jewish disciples of Jesus, we can see that there's lots of different angles that are used to view the phenomenon. So I'm now going to go into my different periods of the history. And the first period is the infancy of the church, the infancy of Jewish Christianity as well, because from the years 0 to 32, when Jesus was alive, his followers were Jewish. They worshipped in synagogue, they worshipped in the temple, they kept the Sabbath, they kept the Jewish food laws, and just like Jesus, they were seen within the Jewish community, maybe as a sect, an odd group with strange beliefs and a strange rabbi who had strange teachings, but they were not seen as Christians because Christians didn't exist. And then in the year 32, roughly, when Jesus has died on the cross and risen from the dead, we have him sending out his disciples, who are all Jews, to make disciples of all nations. And this is where the Great Commission changes the nature of the people of God. So they are not just Jews who believe in Jesus, but even the nations, the Romans, the Greeks, the Scythians, the Persians. Anyone now can believe in Yeshua, in Jesus. The focus of the early church up until around the year 120 is still with the 14 Jewish bishops of Jerusalem, the church in Rome, the church in Antioch, the church in Spain, the church in the ancient world is growing around the Greco-Roman Empire, but the focus is still on what is happening in Jerusalem. And the church historian Eusebius writes and gives the details of 14 Jewish bishops in Jerusalem, from James, the brother of Jesus, up until the last one.
Does it make a difference, Alton, if the bishop in Syria, if the bishop in Rome, if the bishop in Jerusalem is an Israelite or a Gentile? Does it make a difference in the teachings if the bishop is ethnic Israel or not? Does that make a difference, Alton? And that's important. Be careful. Think with your good mind.
Also, we should see that within the Jewish community, the Jews who believe in Jesus are still part of that community. I will discuss that in a little while. But they are also spreading the message of Jesus to the Greco-Roman world. And the church in Rome and the church in Antioch and the church in Greece are growing. And by around the year 150, it is unusual to have Jews who believe in Jesus. The majority of Christians are not Jewish. And Justin Martyr, one of the early church fathers, writes in his dialogue with Trypho. Trypho is a Jewish rabbi, that he knows that there are some Jews who still believe in Jesus and still keep the food laws, the laws of the Pentateuch, the kosher laws, the laws about the Sabbath, but he doesn't really approve of them. He knows they exist, but in his view, that's not the mainstream of Christianity. Now, this story is told in the book of Eusebius, the church history, and he reports on a Palestinian Christian who may have been Jewish, but probably was not, called Hegesippus. And he talks about these first followers of Jesus who are Jewish.
Now, remember, when the shift take place and we ride and we the ones in charge of the bus, now we driving the bus. We going to tell y'all where y'all going to stop, where y'all going to get off at. This bus going to keep going. So now when the shift out, and this is the beef, when the shift took place, what took place? When the shift from Hebrew or from Israel to Gentile, when that took place, what changes do we see? That, all right, now going through the same church fathers, they're saying that we know that there's people that's culturally doing this. And then remember later on, certain people were forced to eat pork, certain people were forced to do things to prove that you really a Christian now, and you give up that garbage. That's the other stuff, and you're not following your culture no more. Do some other stuff. Eat this pork and let us know you really saved.
Continuing, And he gives them another name. He calls them Ebionites. Ebion is from the Hebrew word meaning poor. And these Ebionites are seen to be poor, perhaps because they were living in Jerusalem and there was poverty. You remember Paul in the book of Romans takes up a collection for the poor in Jerusalem, but probably because he saw them as poor in their faith and in their doctrine. He says that some of them did not really believe that Jesus was truly God, truly divine, but rather a special human being. And he also thinks that they were poor in their faith because they did not believe that you could be saved just by believing in Jesus. They thought that you had to keep the law.
All right, Alton, that's where we want to park right there. That's where you want to park right there. Are these Ebionites, are they descendants of the Judaizers in Acts, the 15th chapter that started the controversy, who they said we have not sent? Because anytime you're dealing with the Israelites, they're going to bring up the Ebionites to go, and they want to go to a time before Nicaea and act like that was the main. Were they a minority? Was that the main teaching, that Jesus wasn't divine? He was just a special human being, and you need the law also for salvation. Not saying that's what the Christian Israelites are saying today, no matter they apply it. That's how I say the conversation runs a little bit deep. Are we beginning to run into a problem because in order to prove the ethnicity now, Yolanda, they're bringing up those that have been deemed heretics? Because that's a big thing. If they say the Ebionites were the true believers, that tear down everything. Now we got to go to Oxyrhynchus. Now we got to go pulling up manuscripts. Now we got to understand the history of this New Testament. Because if Paul and them wrote that before Nicaea, that people were worshiping Jesus, that Jesus held a high place in this heavenly kingdom, in this invisible kingdom, now we got a problem. Because that means Ebionites are heretics. And if y'all trying to connect yourselves with them and saying, yes, that's us, them, you showing and proving the point that the Christians talk about now, right and exact. Y'all ain't them people. Because the doctrine is false. Forget now the ethnicity going out the window. I don't care if they were black folk. If they say Christ wasn't divine. Or you're going to say the New Testament is tampered with, because we got manuscripts prior to Nicaea, and we got church fathers prior to Nicaea saying this is not what we have received, that the Son has received worship. We got haters that saying they singing hymns promising not to fornicate, and they're singing songs to Jesus like if he was a god. They're worshiping him and promising not to fornicate. And like Pastor David said, not to go to them games. They were being fed to the line. They ain't had no time in the Olympics and all that crazy stuff. They separated themselves from the world and loved each other. That's what them people did. So now this is where we stop listening. Because if you're dealing with them folk and they don't believe Christ's divine nature, he just had one nature, he was just one good super being, or even adopted. He lived so good by the laws of Moses, God adopted him as his baptism, and he became the Son of God, a high special person. That's beef. That's beef. That's where your ears shut right there. That's where your ears shut out and you can't hear the rest of the story. But being that a lot of us ain't steeped into church history and we into the doctrine, we got to make sure our doctrine line up with the church history. Or did Constantine in politics and something? Everybody from Seventh-day Adventists to church fathers to people in the conscious community, the Israelites, everybody to Dan Brown, everybody saying something happened in Christianity took on a new face. It wasn't invented. The silly people say it was invented at Nicaea, but clearly Christians were being killed way prior to Nicaea. So that's where the madness come in. But it's just a mess in between there somewhere. How much has it changed? How much has it changed? And this is where the beef comes in. So if you need a Q-tip, Alton. If you can hear him out now, let's try to see what's what. Look what Fervent Charity say. Ebionites were heretical. Read it somewhere while studying church history. I read it somewhere while studying church history. Was a book okay or it was a book on heresies. Yes, they would be along them lines. Now, so this is where, like I said, this is where folk ain't trying to hear nothing no more. But now, were they just done? Because he did mention something about Nazarenes also. That was another sect. We had different sects, different groups. So we got to look through all of these sects that were claiming to be original ethnically and what their practices were. Were they practicing some stuff just on custom and not saying it was it was to save you, Ephesians 2:8-9, and they were saying the Son is divine? That's what we're looking for. People that understand the divinity of the Son, and people that's not saying that they're keeping these customs for salvation in any other way and not trying to push them on other people. That's what we're looking for right here. And then it's a little extra grave if we can find out that they're of a darker hue. Because these are all the claims that's on the table.
And of course, this is one of the heresies in the early church. It's called Ebionitism. And sadly, I don't think this is completely true, but this is what Epiphanius and others wrote against these people who he called the Ebionites. I think he misunderstood them. But he certainly saw them as a danger to the church because they were Jews who were still keeping the Torah, the law of the Hebrew Bible, and they believed in Jesus. Now, Origen in the year 230 debate.
I'm sorry, Yolanda, let me ask you a question. What you think in Acts 15, when they came back to Antioch with the letters and James talk about those guys that came and troubled your souls whom we have not sent? What do you think happened to those group of people? You think because they were Pharisees that believed. That's what the Bible said. They were believing Pharisees, so they believed on the Messiah now. They said, oh yeah, Jesus is the way. But these Gentiles got to be circumcised after the manner of Moses. This is where all the beefing, all the arguing is coming in. And then Peter stood up and said, y'all know how a while back God by my mouth said that the Gentiles should hear the word of God. Talk about when he went in Cornelius' house in Acts the 10th chapter. He reiterated the story. And then when James and them began to pen the letter, they said it seems good to the Holy Ghost and to us. So now we're trying to interpret Acts 15. We're trying to understand this letter in light of people trying to make the Ebionites saved. What happened to those other people? You think they stayed around? You think because James and them wrote a letter that they just stopped? Oh, well, James and them said we can't keep on teaching this. Or they just left Antioch and started going to other places. Did those same people start running around saying, listen, Paul ain't no real apostle? Paul ain't no real apostle? Because clearly Paul wrote epistles like he was being persecuted. So he would say things like apostle, not called by man, but called of God. He had to start defending in certain epistles. He had to start defending his apostleship. Why? Them folk had to still be around. They were Pharisees. They had to be respected. They knew that book. They spit that book too. But they were just saying something different to the Gentiles. So by the time the Gentile church come over, how do you think they're going to feel about these dudes if these are the descendants of them folks? Hey.
With rabbis and he debates with Jewish Christians in Caesarea, and right down through the centuries there are Jews who believe in Jesus who are helping Jerome, who translated the Hebrew and the Greek Bible into Latin, the Vulgate translation that we have. He was assisted by Jewish Christians, Jews who knew Jesus and Jews who understood Hebrew in their translation. And right down through the centuries, we have evidence of what we call Jewish Christian groups, especially in the East, in Asia, influencing the Syriac church, the church based in Antioch and in Persia, and also influencing the formation of Islam, because it's very likely that Muhammad was influenced not just by some Christians called Nestorian Christians, but also by Jewish Christians in some of their teaching.
Now, the problem is that's how come That's some of the evidence that people would point to. That's how come you see such a heavy anti-Trinitarian spirit. God is one from Prophet Muhammad. You can't join no sons, Quran. You can't join no sons. Allah has no partners. That's specifically what Quran say. Now, if he's influenced by these type of non-Trinitarian, quote unquote Christians, that could be a problem. This is the evidence right here. Can you be a Christian now? Even if you're ethnically connected to Christ, can you be a true believer and be born again and not believe or understand Jesus to be the Son of God the way we understand it right now today? Can you just be saved thinking Jesus was just a prophet? The Messiah was to come and teach us the ways of God, and the Messiah was a regular human being. He didn't die for our sins. He died and was gone. Or even worse yet, the Messiah got married, had a baby named Sarah, and Sarah ended up going to France. And it's part of a bloodline. Can you be saved? Somebody said yes. Can you be saved? Okay, somebody said heck no. Can you be saved and believe that? In that case, they are saved. In that case. Like I said, what happened to them? What happened to them Judaizers after Paul and them got back to Antioch with the letter? Did they just stop doing what they're doing, or they just became a moving company and teaching other people and setting up churches or groups or assemblies like Paul was setting up assemblies? Fair use.
Now I'm going to continue by just talking about the differences between Judaism and Christianity, and when the two groups separated and became two different religions and two different communities. The traditional view, which James Parks and Marcel Simon and James Dunn have supported, is that between the years 70 to 135 AD, the church and the Jewish people underwent a split. And this is because in the year 70, the temple was destroyed by Vespasian, the Roman emperor, and the sacrifices had to cease. And in the year 135, the Bar Kokhba revolt formally ended the independence of the Jewish people. But new understandings emerged, and Daniel Boyarin and Paula Fredrickson and others in the book The Ways That Never Parted said that actually there was no quick split between Judaism and Christianity. And this has significance because today I would say that if you understand it correctly, Judaism and Christianity should not be seen as two separate religions. There is only one God, the God of Israel.
Oh man, we got to park right there. Where fervent charity at? Did Jesus come to start a new religion? Should we look at it that way, or did man separate it? Did it need to be separated because of the teachings of the apostles? And if so, it's separated into two different things. This is what we beef about all the time. Who has the true doctrine? Who's teaching the true doctrine? Who is the true assembly? That's how come it all comes back down to this, even above skin color, what the people look like, what the teachings are that saves the soul. And what should you do? What are the practices you should have? So that's where we start going in with holidays, and that's where the beef is. And to be honest, I'm telling my church folk, but boy, y'all better abandon that tree. Abandon that tree, abandon that egg, because it's a bad look. They're like, man, ain't nobody worried about that. That's tradition that came down. They're them Israelites banging and blowing and trying to act like that tree, because the tree's a big thing. And that's something that they use because Hebrew roots, because if we combined the Israelite awakening and Hebrew roots, and then with older quote unquote cults, Jehovah Witnesses that wasn't messing with that tree, them Seventh-day Adventists that wasn't messing with that egg, and all of this. So if we combined all of them on the internet right now, boy, listen, Christianity, we got a problem. Houston, we got a problem. Mess around with that tree. Y'all better break that tree down. Of course, them people think it's Jeremiah. The tree wasn't even around then. So we got to take him, and we got to show him some things. And then, you know, Abu and Mike Heiser and a few other people are going to drop and argue for a late December dealing with the birth of Christ. But still, we got 100 years minimum. We got 100 years before people were really acknowledging, like they said, oh, well, that was Christmas. The wise men came in. Yeah, all right. If that's what you want to say, the shepherds, not the shepherds were there at the time, but the wise men come and talk about, where is he born, King of the Jews? We come to work. If y'all want to use that to say, well, those are early seeds of Christmas and the shepherds, all right. If y'all want to argue that, y'all want to argue that. But people picking out a specific day, giving gifts out of a specific day, that came in as tradition. You hear me, Sola Scriptura people? That came in as tradition. Ain't no good book for that. At least let's admit that so we won't look like liars. Because the mere fact that we got to let somebody else bring that up, we looking like liars. That same energy we got when we see those Hitler comments, and Hitler ain't make this comment, where y'all get this from this man? That same energy we got for that, we got to have the same energy all around. We're not saying it's devil worship. People try to make connections with that and ancient paganism, and we see trees in different worship, like we see candles in different worship, or wreaths like they used to have back there, and they take on symbolic meaning. What that evergreen tree can make it through the winter, when all of the trees die, when everything is death and vegetation. So we got a lot of explaining to do outside of the Bible. We got to do all these explaining. Man, listen, we better abandon some of this. That's my position. But other people say we don't have to, and it's okay. But we got to make sure we know how to argue it and what angle to argue it from, because these people are arguing. Listen, y'all folk done developed into too much stuff. We're following a closer way. Now, if it looks like, listen, we're following a closer way, this is what they did. Jesus ate this. Jesus did this. Why would you be a follower of him, Yolanda, and you do something different? Shouldn't that alone, if you love him, shouldn't that alone make you leave the ribs alone at the cookout? Don't cook them. Come on, he done blessed you with a mortgage. He done blessed you with a crib. If he ain't eat pork, why you eating pork? And we gotta make sure we arguing this thing right. Because what people want to run around here talking about crafty counsel, they trying to explain away this, they try to do that. We got to make sure we understand this argument, where this thing going, how it thing growing in development, and most importantly, that this thing ain't brand new. This thing been around a long time. They don't know they had apologists 1900 years ago. Some of them, a good bit of them, were bishops, but they argued this thing. They were beefing about this thing, and it wasn't nothing nice. Just like people arguing and taking it serious right now and threatening and all this, it wasn't nothing nice. And people think that it might even be coming back to a time where people, because of their religious beliefs, are willing to pick up the sword. Peter cut off the man's ear. Jesus healed the ear. He ain't saying get rid of the hammer. He ain't saying get rid of the sword. People may take it somewhere else. Fair use.
Who sent his son, the Messiah, Jesus, to be the Messiah of Israel and Savior of all the world. And so the identities of Jews and Christians were a later invention after the time of the New Testament, when it was necessary to separate these two. The traditional view is that between 70 and 135 and the destruction of the temple, the Jewish Christians were isolated from the rest of the Jewish people and had to choose whether they were part of the whole church or not. And in the year around 90 of the Common Era, according to the Talmud, there is a prayer that is put in the Jewish prayer book in the synagogue called the Birkat Haminim, the blessing of heretics. And in reality, this is not a blessing, but a curse. It says, may those be cursed who are heretics and sectarians, and may they have no share in the people of Israel or the world to come. And it was thought that if there was a Jew who believed in Jesus in the synagogue service, they would not say this prayer because they were bringing the curse upon themselves. So this prayer, the Birkat Haminim, was introduced in the synagogue by a rabbi called Samuel the Small to make Jews who believed in Jesus leave the synagogue. That is a traditional view. but it's likely that they still were in the Jewish community. And when Jerusalem became a Roman city in the year 70, its name was changed to Aelia Capitolina, the eagles of the capital, the symbol of the Roman legions. According to the church historian Eusebius, the Jews who believed in Jesus were given a vision to flee the city before the Romans destroyed it. And they fled across the river Jordan to a place called Pella, which is just north of the Sea of the Dead Sea. And they then were saved from the massacre of Jerusalem by the Roman emperor, but they were isolated and separate from the rest of the Jewish people. Now I'm going to pause there. I hope you have some questions and comments to discuss in your break, and we will resume in a few minutes' time. Thank you for your attention. Daniel Boyarin, Paul Fredrickson, and many others who say that this wasn't really what happened. This is us looking back, and we are putting back into the past our understanding of the present. Because if you look at the present, it seems obvious that Judaism is here, Christianity is here, completely separate religions, which is difficult for me as a Jewish disciple of Jesus, because I'm both. I'm faced with being a Christian by my faith in Jesus, and I'm Jewish because of my family, my background, and my sense of being part of the people of God. So these new scholars have argued that the separation of Judaism and Christianity into two separate religions, two separate faith communities, was unsystematic. It wasn't organized. It was sporadic. It was not universal. It came in lots of different places in different ways, and not complete until the 4th or 5th century, some 400 or 500 years after the time of Jesus, mainly because of the Roman Empire, and that Christianity, once it had become the official religion of the Roman Empire, then turned against Jews and Judaism, because Christianity needed to define itself against Judaism and opposed to Judaism, just as it was against paganism and opposed to paganism. So what Daniel Boyarin calls the partitioning of Jewish Christianity, how it got caught in the middle of these two groups, is difficult to define, and the boundaries or the borders are not easy to identify. This means that when the church was defining its doctrine, especially the doctrine of the Trinity, it was also acting against the Jews and Judaism, and especially against Jews who believed in Jesus. So in the year 325, we have the Council of Nicaea, which debated about the nature of Christ, the human nature of Christ and the divine nature of Christ, and the way that the Trinity was truly one and truly three. Now, I agree with all these decisions about the Trinity and about the human and divine nature of Christ. I'm fully Trinitarian. I fully accept the deity of Jesus, that he is God incarnate, God in human form. But sadly, what also happened was that these councils, at the same time as deciding these doctrines, decided that Jews could not believe in Jesus and still keep any Jewish festivals, could not keep Jewish food laws, could not marry other Jews, could not say Jewish prayers, could not visit the synagogue, could not keep Passover, and in fact they were seen as second-class citizens.
And thence we got the problem, Alton. Now, did the church, and later on seeing it in Spain and stuff, wanted to stamp out the customs They want now. If somebody is claiming, if somebody, I can't say no names because these folk want to go making videos. If somebody in here that's saved, that's an Israelite, that do believe that the Son is divine, like he said, he agreed, and we've always had Israelites that believed and agreed on that. Paul believed and agreed on that, and so many others that the Son was divine. Great is the manifestation of godliness. God was manifested in the flesh. Great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifesting in the flesh. Thomas saw him, and Thomas touched his side and said, my Lord and my God. So they believe God came down here, according to Isaiah, God came down here to the earth. Now, the beef is, like I said, the beef is those that believe that, even though they did believe that, and they were full-blown born-again believers, they had to take a second-class place, and people wanted to take it further. Prove to me. Prove to me you really saved and you really love him and you say he's divine, but prove it to me. Go a step further. Miss the Passover. Eat this pork sandwich. I want to see you eat it. Just if you really believe it, if you really believe it's not by works of righteousness, and if you really believe like we believe, just eat this pork sandwich. Now, is that like you heard what Elder Green said when he came on? When the Gentilizing started. The Gentilizing was violent. They were forcing some folk. Just you got to show it to us, because if you act like you don't want to eat this pork, we know you don't believe in the divine nature. You now you running them. Now you running them up because we want to. This is to show us you believe. Now remember, just a few years earlier, homeboy had some pork he brought up in the temple. He wanted to bring some pig in the temple, and them folk want to go crazy. So now you're gonna force these same people right now. 50, 80 years later, you're gonna force these same people right now. Well, that's a couple of hundred years later. If we go back to the first, second Maccabees, if we go back to that period, and by the time Nicaea came on the scene, that's those little problems right there. Even if they say they believe in customs, that we don't like their customs, we hate the customs. So now my thing is, if people are coming around us, if we got the light-skinned people and we love them and we respect their custom and we willing to even ask them to come to the church and explain the Passover from a Jewish point of view so we can know more about our Lord and Savior. Why when the dark-skinned people say they did their custom, no, we ain't even inviting them to the church. When they say they did their custom, well, where you got the lamb from? How you did it? And our energy is so much different. I'm just saying it's a lot. I'm getting out of here, y'all. I'm going to ask the Lord, but it's definitely a lot to talk about. Anybody with any I think I put the link out there. Any comments, anything that you'd like to say? It's definitely some history that's worth discussing, especially in light of all this stuff that's happening. People can talk all that ecumenical garbage and all of this stuff. But if there was first century believers that were ethnically something, I know Paul says he counted all dung and all of that stuff. But I personally, some people are arguing differently that Peter and Paul and them started eating pork and they was doing, they knew it was nothing. And they were doing that. If they want to take that position, that's one thing, but I don't know. Do we got Israelites that come through that be like, yeah, I'm born again. I believe in the divine nature of the Son and this and that. And I have a Christmas tree. I'm Israel and I have a Christmas tree. I'm Israel and I eat pork. I don't know, y'all. Listen, it is what it is. It is what it is. All right, y'all. I'm getting out of here. We'll chop it up later. God bless.